the overall percentage increase for the Teamsters bargaining unit, I wanna say was like, I don't remember what I said last time, 6.5% or 7%. Yeah, it sort of changes only from the standpoint of when I run the reports, every time a new payroll runs, because people get pay increases, promotions and, you know what I mean? So every single status change form, every incentive pay that goes through, every new hire that comes on board, sort of changes that number a little bit. By and large, it's probably, it could be over 7%, so.
So, just so the committee understands, so what are the examples of people that would only be getting the 2%? Because they're already, you can explain it to
Okay,
us.
so here's how the formula works. So basically the formula takes your length of service in your current position and does it off the midpoint of the pay range. And so, for instance, if you were a brand new employee and you were just hired, then when I run the formula would bring you at 77% of the midpoint, which happens to be very close to the minimum of the pay grade, right? So that's, because if you're here less than a year, you're close to the minimum by formula. And then for every year of service that you have, it increases a couple percentage points. So for instance, if you're here from, 1 year, maybe it's 80%, 82%, 84%, the midpoint, it jumps in 2 to 3s to the midpoint, which is 100%, which is that if you're here 10 plus years, the formula is going to put you, right around 100% of the midpoint of the pay grade. And then there are some people, when I run the number, that once I plug that formula in, they're already way above where they're supposed to be by the formula.
Why do you call it, just out of curiosity, 100% of the midpoint instead of 50% of the range?
Well, okay, whatever you want to call it, doesn't matter.
I was just
It's
curious.
50%, because when I use a formula, I can't do 50% of the range, I have to use 100% of the midpoint. So the formula is just built on the midpoint and it's 100%. So if I'm doing, it's 50% of the range, if you want to call it that, it's the same thing.
I do know employees that have been here for 20 years.
Right.
That don't want to promote. All they want to do is
Right,
do their
yeah.
job
Right.
and go home.
Yeah.
Is this going to penalize them in any way?
No, I mean, it is true that if you've been in the position for a really long time, and I mean, I'm going to say 20 years or more, that, I can tell you that obviously none of your bargaining unit members are getting less than, 2%. So even on the top end of the scale, and although we put the language that are currently within 4%, I believe that even with that the tops are moving so much that I don't think anybody's going to be frozen. I haven't found anyone yet. I mean, I'm still going through this 2,700 people, but I haven't seen anybody that I think is topped out. Maybe one or two, and those would primarily have only really come from demotions. I mean, if you were a person who was, a special equipment operator and you got demoted down to utility worker 1 for whatever reason. And we just had somebody recently who was a supervisor and had to take a demotion because of an issue, and so they went down to, I've had actually a couple in the last couple weeks, where it was a higher level supervisor who now went down to either a rec leader or a utility worker 1. I had one do. So those people are going to be real high up in their grade, and some of them haven't even been here that long. Like, for instance, the one gentleman I'm thinking of has been here since 2014. He was a supervisor, had to take a demotion, now he's a utility worker 1, but he's going to be high up.
But he's at the top of his pay grade.
Yeah, not the top, but he would be higher than.
So he's the type of guy that would only get 2%?
Yeah, he could be the type of guy that would. I'm not guaranteeing.
Based on your
but,
formula of
right,
longevity.
Right, yeah. Longevity by itself doesn't impact you, because we have bus drivers that have been there, 15 or 20 years, or well, we don't have many bus drivers that are there that long, but I can tell you this: the more tenured bus drivers, I'm seeing some of the larger increases, for instance. So those, so all I'm saying is, being in your pay grade a long time, your position a long time, doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get one of the lower increases. It's just an example of when it could happen. But for instance, with the bus drivers, like I raised their pay goes up quite a bit. Well, obviously, if the pay goes up quite a bit, then
analysis and realize they're
right.
underpaid, so now the pay range is
Yes.
expanded, so they're
Right.
not topped out anymore.
And because they went for 5 or 6 years, 5 years without a pay increase, some of those people that are in that 10-year range are seeing the larger increases because they would be the people that have to come up the most. And so I can't even make the statement that, you'd have to, that if you're in your position a long time, you're going to get punished, because some of the biggest increases I'm seeing are some of the longest termed people in positions, you know, longest tenured people in positions.
So how does the formula apply to someone who is within the 4% of the top of their pay grade? So if they're, let's just say 2% less than the top of their pay grade, what do they get?
Okay, so here's what happens. So I run the formula, and it says that you should be at, say, 100% of the pay. We'll use the same example. So say it says you should be, say the grade goes from $10 to $20 an hour, and 15 is the midpoint. If you're exactly at 15 right now, then you're going to get a 4% increase. So if you're right where you're supposed to be, then we're moving everybody 4%. That's the raise that you'll get if you're already where you're supposed to be. If you're low, then you're going to be brought up to where it says that you're supposed to be. You know, if you're
Which could be a 6%. You know.
yeah, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, whatever. If you're high, then I looked at how high you are. So in other words, if you were more than 5 to 10% above where you're supposed to be, then your increase instead of 4 might be 3%. If you were between 10 and 15% above where you're supposed to be, then you might get 2%. And if you're more than 15% above, and again, you know, looking at it, I adjusted those numbers just to make sure no one, and I don't think really anybody, countywide, you have to be above, more than 20% above where the formula says. So you'd almost have to be at the top of the range, when I'm saying you should be more at the middle of the range in order to not get anything. But that's how it works.
You know, I've seen this type of language quite often over the years, and even looking at item 2, those numbers usually match. So you're going to get a 4% unless you're within 4%. You're only
Yeah,
going to
I would agree with that.
Why wouldn't this say no less than 2% unless you're currently within the 2% of the top? That's what I'm getting at. They usually match.
Yeah, I don't know if that is accurate, so I don't know. I mean,
Those
you asked
are
me for
for us.
language, because again, I haven't 100% finished everything, so it's not that I don't want to give you that or say that that's not accurate. I just, you know, when you asked me to go back and review it, I just made sure everybody was within 4, and they were. So I didn't have an issue. So, I mean, I just, you know, I feel more comfortable with this language. I mean, you know, I can talk to you about any outliers if you want. I don't, you know, I mean, if you want to discuss anybody that's going to get, you know, 2, I certainly will be happy to talk with you about them. And just explain or at least verify the length of service on them to make sure we've got it right. But I'm comfortable with this language, and I just think that your members are going to be very happy with the study. That's what I think.
Last time we did this, after it was over, you gave me a list. Could you give me a list again of the employees and how much they're gonna get?
She did give it to you, right?
Yes, you
No,
did.
I never did.
Yes, you did.
All right, well, whatever I gave you last time, I'll give you this time.
Okay.
after it's all done.
I mean, I told her that you guys were looking for.
It would have been after the fact, though. It wouldn't.
Yes, it was there, it was, yeah.
Yes, of course.
Well, the thing
That's
is,
fine.
what's the difference of us getting it before or
But I
after?
don't have it done. I won't have it done before. I'm not going to have that list until the middle of October, pretty much.
Even though the raises are going into effect October 1?
They go into effect the first pay in October, but that's not paid out until October 18th. So they won't be on the spreadsheet. I can't actually even run the last report until after October 4th payroll runs. So,
Yeah,
Because-
I couldn't specifically remember. if it
Yeah,
was
she
her
did.
or for-
yeah, if it was after, that's fine. I
No,
can
it was
give you
Barbara,
whatever. Yeah,
it's
you'll-
Barbara
you'll-
right
you'll
here,
have
but,
it.
you were saying.
Whatever I gave you
just-
last time, I'll give you this
Yeah, I just
time.
wanted, like you said, if you have, somebody has a problem with getting
Yeah.
2%, that's, I wanna see, you
Yep.
know, if it's.
I will have the communication with you after that.
Okay,
Yeah, so
great,
some-
thank you.
If somebody, I guess what Doug's getting at too, is if somebody says, this is a bunch of BS, I only got a 1% raise, and at least we can examine the methodology.
Well, none of yours will.
What's that?
None of yours will only get 1%. But if they say 2, then yes.
Well,
you'll
if
have-
somebody's within the top 4% of their pay range, they may only get a 1% if we agree to 1. Because that's what it says, no less than 2%
Yeah, and
unless.
I think
That's
that
the reason why I
there's-
feel better if that's at 2% instead of 4%.
Yeah, I don't even think there's anybody in that category, to be honest with you. I think that
So
anybody.
anyway, back to my
Yeah.
thought, that
Okay.
if somebody
Sorry.
came to us and said, this whole thing's a bunch of BS, they don't like me, that's the only reason I got a 1%.
I can prove that up to
Then
them
we
with you, yes.
can verify the
Absolutely.
methodology and make sure
Great,
that.
thank you.
Yeah, and I don't even mind in that instance having we'll sit down and have one-on-one meetings, and I'll even go through it with somebody, because I don't want anybody to think that there's any magic here. It's literally a formula off the midpoint based on the length of service and position. That's what it is. So,
100% of the 50%.
it's 100% of the 50%, and then upped by 10 and down by 90. so that the old rate calculates into the new rate, right, so.
All right, well, any questions on the proposal before we call this?
The only other question I had was, and I think, excuse me if you answered it the last time, you are changing park attendance to
Not all.
rangers.
Some of the park attendants that are in the passive parks are having title changes to park rangers because.
Okay, what do we consider a passive park?
One that is passive instead of active.
No soccer games, baseball.
You mean like Mitchell Park compared to Starkey?
I believe that they are the parks that are more, less recreational and more nature.
Okay.
But that's a really good question for the Parks Director.
Is this going to affect them in any way, being that they are getting a job title change?
It will impact most of them in a very good way.
Good way, they'll be getting more money then.
Well, because when I comp a ranger,
Uh-huh.
rangers, they would be underpaid compared to most park rangers,
Okay, so
down south.
I guess on my way home, I'll stop by the parks and let them know.
Make sure they're on one, like last time.
I mean, the reality is, last year we made some movements in equipment operators and, and so we're dealing with some compression issues in the labor supervisor roles and things like that. But we went out to the market and did a very extensive market look. And so I'm very pleased with how the study came out. I think most of your employees will be very pleased at how the study came out. And to the extent that some are getting less than 4, I believe wholeheartedly you'll be able to articulate to them in a very educated and manner that they'll understand it. I don't think anybody will not get it, so.
Okay. So in other words, when I stopped to talk to the guy that had eaten his chicken wings, called you and told him I told him the union was gonna stop their raise.
Just telling you how it got back to me. I have no idea what you said, I don't know where you went, I just know I knew about it right away, and
Alright,
A
so-
union rep is gonna tell the people the union's gonna stop their raises.
Oh,
I don't think you told him that, I think that
I
that
think
was their
that's what
concern.
he
Their-
heard.
Well, they were worried that you weren't going to accept the study. I think
Yeah.
by and large that the managers are promoting the study to their employees, understandably, because some of them have seen some of the results. And I think that some of them are very excited for their employees, and so I don't think that
I'm
anybody
not
wants
so
to.
excited for Doug.
No, not so excited for that.
Don't the commissioners have the final say of whether to take the study?
So 2 things. One, the study is going to be adopted in the budget. So to the extent that it fits within the budget, it is absolutely going through as part of the budget. Secondly, they will adopt your contract. So the contract language is where they would have, potentially a say. However, as you know, it's gone on the consent agenda the last 2 times we've done it without issue. So I don't.
So September 18th, I have in my notes, it's the second budget hearing that this will be either approved or not approved.
Yes, yep, at 6:30 PM, I think, or something, whatever that time is, I don't know what it is. Now, this will be interesting because your contract, should you get it done by then, meaning your ratification vote, will be on the contract agenda for the 18th also in the morning.
Yeah, speaking of which, how are we gonna do that this year?
Let's just see if it is.
Oh, okay.
So any other questions on the proposal before we caucus? And then we'll get back in there until, seeing none, hearing none, can you give us a few minutes?
Yep, how many minutes?
So how can we get you back up here? Is there a phone in here or something?
Why don't I just come back in, just give me a time. Until 11:30 or?
Yeah, 11:30. Bless you. I like it, to be quite honest, guys. I just know that, if somebody really gets screwed on this thing, then we have a right to, I was just thinking out loud. So if there is is there adjusted in the same manner as for all of the non-union county employees? So that gives us an argument for somebody, like I just brought up, comes up to us and says, look, man, this is bullshit. I got one